where we discuss issues about this thing called life. Thank you, my dear viewers, for tuning into this episode. I ask you to please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook page. We are also on the Faith Watch app, so feel free to download the Faith Watch app on your mobile device. We read and value your comments, so please feel free to write down your comments and suggestions below. When we think of executives, we think they are career-driven, goal-driven, and driven by profit and bottom line. In this episode, we will hear. We have a retired banker. Ano nga ba? He is a banker, social entrepreneur, father. May nakalimutan ako. In the reverse order. Anyway, to know more, you will know more about our guest today. I am very pleased to present to you. Welcome to Buhay Parang Life, Mr. Joey Bermudez. Hi, Joey.
Hello, Rita. I'm pleased to be here. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Joey. Okay, sabi ko retired banker ka eh. Let us talk about your career as a banker. How did you start did you finish banking and finance in college?
No, my collegiate course was accounting.
Accounting. May nabasa akong post mo, Joey, that you were being asked to write for a certain bank president.
Mm-hmm.
Hindi no? Nabasa ko yun sa FB mo.
That's correct.
Is that how you started in the industry?
I guess you could say that. Yeah. When I was in third year college, since I had been a working student all throughout college, in third year, somebody recommended me to a bank owner who was also at the same time executive VP of his own bank. So I became his, you might call it admin assistant. So. I would write letters for him. I would handle communication. And since he was a former school teacher, he was fond of not the typical business correspondence. So his letters were punctuated by a lot of prose and poetry. So, and he wanted me to write the same way because I would write for him. That would be, his signature would be there. And he wanted to make sure the style did not differ from the style that people have gotten used to whenever they would read these letters. So I had to adjust. But at the same time, since I was working in the banking environment, that became my first exposure to an environment that I became fascinated about. And therefore, even after college, I decided I'd pursue a career in banking, even if all my other classmates went into public accountancy. They went to SGB,
right.
Bayan, to Valdez, and all that.
You said you were fascinated with the banking industry. What is it? What is about it that fascinated you?
Yeah, at that time, a lot of changes were taking place in the banking industry. That was a time when the central bank was encouraging banks to merge, to consolidate, to become bigger, because the central bank was anticipating that banking was going to get globalized, and therefore the local banks are going to encounter even more competition from international banks. And it was important that they achieve some level of scale, which would make them competitive. So the issues that were coming to fore at that time were so exciting, actually stressful for many bank owners because very few of them really wanted to merge or consolidate.
Right.
Yeah, but that fascinated me. That level of complexity.
Complexity.
Yes, I didn't care about that industry before until I saw what was happening at that time.
Okay, the Joey Bermudez that I know, kasi nagkakilala tayo in community, in our parish. I know that you and your wife, Esther, also entered the renewal. So the Joey Bermudez that I know is a deeply spiritual man. So let's talk about your faith. Were you always religious?
I was, I guess the correct description is I was sporadically religious. in
Why do you say that? Oo.
my years as a single person, most of the religiosity or the strong faith would come from my mom. No?
All right.
Was a deeply religious person,
All
and
right.
she would pray for me every time I was in a very delicate situation, especially when I was waiting for the results of the board exams.
Right.
I would see my mom praying every night, no? And every morning whenever she would wake up. And then when I got married, Esther, she's a very deeply spiritual person.
Right.
And she would pull me into the spiritual movement every chance she could get. She wasn't always successful. I would always fall out, but she was always there, bringing me back to the fold.
All right. So you have a strong faith, no, so to speak, kasi coming pala from your childhood, your mom was a deeply religious woman. So share with our viewers any, the incidents in your life as a banker. You retired as a bank president. You've been to other banks. You were top level executive, and surely there were decisions you had to make. How did your faith, what was the role of your faith in the many complex decisions that you had to make as a banker?
The faith was what would keep you together. There were many situations as a banker when I would find myself totally clueless about the issues that I was confronting. Like a CEO, people would come to you for all sorts of decisions. And there'd be very difficult decisions to make day to day and operationally, especially in areas that weren't my particular field of strength. Because even bankers have their own specializations.
Right. What would be your specialization?
I grew up in lending, in commercial lending in particular. So I was very familiar with risk management. Familiar with I was quite good at looking at the borrowers and evaluating whether they'd be good borrowers or not.
All right.
But I wasn't really very deep in treasury, for example, or trading or international banking. So those things I had to learn on the job. And many of them I learned only when difficult decisions were brought to me for resolution. And there were many situations when I'd feel very incompetent to make the decision. But of course, you wouldn't tell your people that. No?
You don't know that, right? You are expected to know everything.
Yes. So when they would come to me, hoping to get a decision, I would often stand up and say, give me 5 minutes, I'll be back. I just go to the washroom.
All right.
And
so
then,
you style mo, 5 minutes. And what would you do?
I'll go to the washroom and pray. I'll say, in those instances, I tell God, I do not know what to do. Just tell me. Just lead me or push me into it. Create a situation that would make me go that way because that is what you wanted me to do. So, and then it didn't always feel like a push. It felt like some kind of an enlightenment all of a sudden falling on you. And you all of a sudden encountering thoughts or the kind of wisdom that you really at that point in time needed to be able to make an intelligent decision.
All right. So you are in commercial lending. Was there ever a time when you had a dilemma about a client because, feeling mo he is not worth it, or maybe you were asked to accommodate a certain borrower, but you knew in your heart he is not qualified for such a big amount?
Yes, about being asked or pressured to favor certain borrowers that otherwise would not have deserved the loan. That happened many, many times, hundreds of times probably in my career as a commercial lender. But there was one particular situation, and this was not about the wrong borrower being given credit, which really changed me forever as a commercial lender. And this was a case where a borrower was defaulting, was not able to pay his loans because his business were running into difficulties.
Okay.
And because at that time I was a young man and I was taking my job personally. No? So every time a borrower would fall back on his payments, I would take offense at that. I'd say, yeah, he's not a good person. No, that was
Oh,
always
you
what.
will take it personally.
Yes. Yeah. So I put a lot of pressure on this borrower, and I didn't realize this borrower was sick. She
Oh,
she had cancer, and I would sometimes go to their place at 6 a.m. And put even more pressure on the couple.
all
And,
right.
and because the wife was sick, she got worse and she passed away.
When you were going to their house at 6 a.m., you did not know that she was sick.
No, I did not.
Oh, you were pressuring them because you felt it was your personal responsibility for your borrower to pay on time.
Yes, I wanted to look good to my bosses in the bank.
Good, yes. Oh,
It was all about uh, performing well based on what was expected of me by
right.
my superiors. So I put so much pressure, and I think it was that kind of pressure which made her health deteriorate, and she passed away. So I felt so guilty about that, but that changed me forever as a lender. From that time on,
In
I
what
became
ways? In
different.
what ways? Yeah.
Um, I became more sensitive to the situations of borrowers. I began to see them as people, not as accounts. Yeah.
Right.
And I began to, I sort of mustered within myself the courage to speak for them whenever I knew that they were in a difficult situation and they deserved some consideration. But my bosses would rather that we pressure them.
Right.
So from that time on, I gathered enough courage to stand up for people like this and to tell my bosses, no, that is not the correct thing to do. And we should give them the leeway that they deserve because they are legitimate businessmen. They're not fraudsters.
Did that impact your career negatively, in a negative way? Para bang, let us remove him from commercial lending because he has such a soft heart.
Uh, I'm sure. I'm sure in many ways my bosses uh, took that against me.
Right.
They probably said he's too soft, or of course they would never tell me. But I'm sure in the back of their minds that was always a some kind of misgiving about whether I was fit for a much higher responsibility or not. So I'm sure it weighed down on my career and my chances of getting ahead.
I would say it weighed down, but you were bank president for many years. And for how many banks were you president?
For with two banks.
With two banks, and you retired as a president. So how do you think, what brought you to that level?
Um, I'd say,
Soft heart.
yeah, I'd say much of it was what God sort of paved the way. I would not even take any credit for having made it that far. I'd say, God created situations that would bring me there despite my limitations and my shortcomings that, people would normally take against someone who is a candidate, say, for CEO or
Right.
even a responsibility. You see a confluence of events transpiring, and then all of a sudden you're right there where you never thought you'd probably be someday.
You are now based in Canada. I remember you saying when you were moving to Canada na you can just be a bus driver. Do you remember telling me that? Bus driver, basta walang stress, because I can imagine the stress that you encounter every day as a bank president. So how did moving to Canada feel like? I mean, living. You wanted to live the industry, right?
Yes.
You wanted to rest.
I wanted to rest. I felt the stress was the wrong stress that I was imposing on myself. And of course, we moved to Canada for much bigger reasons, and a lot of them had to do with the children.
Yes.
When we moved, it was a very difficult transition. Um, Difficult in the beginning for the children because they had friends in the Philippines, and when we moved, they were complete strangers to the neighborhood. But eventually, the biggest difficulty was on me and my wife. We had to make the most adjustment given our age at the time we moved. The children adapted so well and adjusted so quickly. They made friends right away.
Okay, but right, you said that in moving, you retired and therefore you were looking forward to a slower pace of life. Was that difficult?
For a while, I loved the slower pace. I loved the fact that I could wake up late,
Right.
not have to rush to any place, and not have to worry about meetings. And then this thing sort of catch up, and eventually I felt I wanted to be more useful, and there was still so much fight inside me, and it would be a pity if I couldn't unleash that. If I was like a caged lion.
Okay, but I want to quote that there is still so much fight inside you. And what was that fight? What was brewing inside you?
I felt there was so much value I could create for people and for society, but my job as a banker and the rules of the game were preventing me from doing exactly that.
Oh, all right. You felt that you did not contribute enough or on a different level. Are you saying that what you wanted to do was something more helpful, personal? What was on your mind?
As a banker, I always loved lending to very small enterprises. So I love microfinance. Even before it became a buzzword, I already loved that field. It was an emerging field at that time. And as a commercial banker, and the bank that I was running at that time was an international bank. So they think about the global issues on treasury and lending. But I would talk about microfinance. And my board would often ask me if I understood what I was talking about. And well, simply because they didn't understand what microfinance was. I was like talking Greek. And they would always ask me if it was even worth considering at all for a large international bank like us.
Right.
So I felt the things that I would have loved to do as a banker, I couldn't do as a member of a corporate organization.
Right. So, what happened to that fight that was brewing inside you?
So I started spending time again in the Philippines. Well, firstly, because I had to fulfill my responsibilities at that time. The year that we moved to Canada was also the year I was president of the Management Association of the Philippines. And I had responsibilities for a year. So I took coming back. At the same time, I put up my microfinance institution at that time. This is the company that I now call Maybridge. And there I was able to do exactly what I felt a banker should be doing, which is to bridge the great divide between those who have the money and those who need it.
Oh, to bridge the great divide between those who have money and those who need it. So how is Maybridge doing now? Who are you helping?
We're helping, our operations now are very focused on affordable private education. So we're lending to small private schools, helping them build their capacity. At the same time, we're lending to micro entrepreneurs, especially those who are part of our e-commerce platform, which we now call Escaparate. So those are the two areas that we have focused on. In the past, we had also done lending to minimum wage earners, blue-collar workers. So not the type that the banks would want.
Why are you taking this risk? Kasi hindi ba, if you are a small entrepreneur or minimum wage earner, isn't that high risk for the banking industry?
It is. And I wanted to prove the thesis that there's a way to lend to people like this. There's a way to lend to micro entrepreneurs without throwing away the bus and giving away the farm. So except that the banks, and pardon the description, I think for some reason they're not innovative. They're probably intellectually laid back, and I wouldn't say it's because they are of that nature. I'd say it's because maybe they're overregulated.
Overregulated. So your industry, the microfinance business, is not regulated. Are you saying that, or hindi masyadong pinapansin?
We're not as regulated as the
Not
banks.
as regulated. Okay, talk to us about Escaparate. Who benefits from who? What is Escaparate?
Escaparate is a platform. It's a digital selling platform that we created in September 2020, when we saw that a lot of micro entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurial mothers who were doing business at home, could no longer sell because their stores were closed.
Yes, September 2020 would be pandemic, COVID.
That's right.
Oh.
So at that time,
you started a business at the height of the pandemic.
yes. Both of my companies were started at the height of a crisis. My microfinance company started during the height of the Lehman Brothers crisis in 2008. And then Escaparate was created at the height of the pandemic, when micro entrepreneurs were complaining that they couldn't sell because people could not see them because of the lockdowns. So we wanted to enable the world to discover them online.
And who are your members, and how big is Escaparate right now? How many members do you have?
We now have 700 entrepreneurial mothers on Escaparate.
All over the Philippines?
Yes, they're all over the Philippines. And before the end of this year, we will have more than 1,000. We started with 33 brave mothers, most of whose businesses were already closed at that time.
Right.
And we said we would put them online so they can start selling again. And now I'm proud to say all of the 33 are selling again and beginning to make as much money as they used to before the pandemic. Yeah, we'd like that to be the situation for all the 700 nanays that we have now on the platform.
Can you honestly say that the rage inside you is now at peace because you're doing what you've always hoped to do?
I'd say so. I'd say I've come to terms with that big fight that was still inside, and I sort of feel now that it has found expression.
Expression. It
It's
is
no longer suppressed.
So where is this desire to help the poor coming from?
From many sources. Partly from childhood trauma, from my experiences as a child growing up under very deprived circumstances and feeling the brunt of social injustice that I could see all around me. I was very much a direct victim of that environment, which I felt was very much unjust, and therefore people ought to do something about it. And it ought not to be surface actions, not like the hypocritical corporate social responsibility programs that you see now being done as propaganda by some companies, but real, genuine community engagement and engagement with the sectors that really need to be helped. So that is one of the sources. The other sources, of course, the fact I hang out with people like yourselves, for example, like my wife's friends, my own friends who happen to think the same way, who happen to feel that same hunger to be able to do something. So that keeps you going.
When do you think you will really, really retire from work and just enjoy grandchildren?
Well, this is my idea of retirement.
This is your idea of retirement?
Yes, being busy with what you love to do. My wife will never agree, but I guess she sort of grudgingly accepts that it's what will make me live longer.
Yes. All right. So any message for C-level people in the C-level who are thinking of retiring and how they can give back to the community or to society?
Well, the first advice I always give people is don't take yourself too seriously. You should learn to have fun, and you can have fun even in the tightest of situations, even when you're grappling with a very serious problem. There can be fun in that if you don't take yourself too seriously. Second, you always need to look for that courage which would enable you to take that next step. Otherwise, you stay where you are and you're always afraid to get out of that comfort zone and you don't grow. So many situations call for a trade-off between growth, whether it's spiritual or intellectual, on one hand, and retardation, which can be comfortable,
right?
And you see a lot of people opting for that, sadly.
Yes, the comfortable, simple life, easy life, easy life.
Yeah, the avoidance of problems, the avoidance of stress. So, but to each one, is reserved his own comfortable option. So, people who feel comfortable with that, I don't begrudge them. So, that is what makes them happy. Fine.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, there's work to do which you can enjoy doing, and I guess that is what will make me live longer.
What else do you plan to do?
Just to keep on until I could no longer read and listen or speak. So at that point, then you get the message that God's giving you that it's over, and you need to go home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Joey Bermudez. Thank you for gracing our show, and thank you, my dear viewers, for watching this episode. This is Rita Dayrit reminding you today, haba-habaan po ang pasensya sapagkat ang buhay parang life.